Welcome to Cloud Realities Live, an original podcast from Capgemini, and this week in partnership with Google Cloud at Google Cloud Next 2025. I'm Dave Chapman.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
And we're continuing our look into industries.
One producer down, one Esme down.
Yes, you will have heard that both third seat presenter and our able producer are at the airport now, aren't they?
Yeah, they're at the airport. Glass of wine in hand, champagne, ready to swan off.
He helpfully sent us a text.
We've stayed
from the
for the
lounge.
full run. We're, heavy lifting.
Yeah,
we
correct.
Stay to the end.
Not only
do
that,
the job that was
we
needed.
have to pack up the gear at the end.
I know.
God knows what's gone wrong with this. But look, let's get on with the show, Rob. Hold it together.
I don't think I can.
No, you'll manage. Now, so we're going to do our third industry deep dive, like I said, and we're going to do telecoms. And I'm delighted to say that we have Jen Hawes-Hewitt, who is the market lead global telecom industry at Google Cloud. Hey, Jen.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing very well, thank you.
Having a good time?
I am. I mean, it's hard not to. There's a lot going on, a lot of good energy.
It is. There's a lot of good energy. Well, we'll come back to that in a second. But also, because we had a third seat free, we pulled in somebody from the road. And it's Andy Appleby. And Andrew is the partner lead in the UK.
Thank
Andy,
you.
how are you? For Capgemini, we should say.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, that's worrying, actually, because I'm normally only called Andrew if I'm in trouble.
Oh.
So
but I'd use your
I'm in
formal
trouble
title
already.
for this.
Yeah, it's very formal. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciated.
I think so. Well, you live up to that. You could be a full Andrew if you wanted.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that.
I think so. I think you
Good
should.
start.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yes, the conference, it has been a hosepipe of announcements this week. Have any stood out particularly for you?
You're right. I mean, it's incredible to see the pace. I have to say, I've been with Google Cloud for 4 years, and even the sort of general cranking up of the pace of the product announcements over the last 9-12 months, it's been an incredible time.
The flywheel is spinning fast, and you can see the results of that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So a couple of things that are particularly relevant for us in the telecom industry, the ability to have generative AI Gemini on GDC. That's a really interesting case.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And also we had a really interesting announcement with Bikash Kohli around Cloud WAN as well, using our global network to offer WAN. So a couple of exciting things. But also it's just the opportunity to meet with customers and just see how they're applying our technology, meeting with partners. Yeah, it's great to see. For me, it's always when it's applied, when you can see how it's cracking those really thorny challenges that have existed in our industry for a really long time. That's exciting.
Well, we'll come back to some of those themes because you're right, they're very resonant in the world of telecoms. Andy, you've only managed to get in yesterday. Anything standing out for you?
I think for me, there's a couple of things. I think as we've heard, the announcements have been coming, but it's really there's a lot of alignment, I think, here between the whole thematic of the event and the mood music of everything. And right now, everything's AI, agentic, but the tech stack and the announcements around that have been really well put together, I think, and there's a real sweet spot emerging. So from a partner point of view, it's quite exciting, I think, to look at. But the channel and the ISVs and the innovation that's coming from that part of the ecosystem, if you like, is really hot. So somehow sort of bringing that together, and there's going to be a lot of collaboration, I think, in taking all of these, sort of, as you say, taking a lot of stuff that's been proof of concept into reality now is, pretty super exciting.
What's the headlines, Rob?
I think an important headline, and it's a theme, has been going for a few nexts now, but it shows they're continuing to invest. This is the multi-cloud, open cloud type approach. So you've got things like GKE Enterprise continues to manage everything. There's an announcement they've just bought Wiz, which is a multi-cloud security platform, doubling down on that. The way you configure the open networking, it's all playing into the same strategy, which is we know we have to play in an ecosystem, and we're going to have an open architecture around it. And out of that, you also get things like everything's built to be able to connect to what you've already got. So this ability to manage things across diverse deployments is a good set of tools to be able to enable organizations to have a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud type approach.
Right.
And that it's unique in the marketplace as well, the continuing to invest in that strategy.
Well, the thing that I think kicked that off was Anthos a few years ago, wasn't it? And you were saying, Jen, that that's still available, but it's been repackaged a little bit and things like that.
Yeah, we were, as you say, from the get-go, we were a third to the market, and it was absolutely imperative that we design, and more broadly in terms of the principles of which you approach innovation, it was always been this kind of open, how can we publish things to the open source. Kubernetes was the beginning of that, right? Some of the stuff we've done in networking, Molt and others.
Right.
So it's a contribution to the wider community. But yeah, you're right. Thematically, we are doubling down on how do we facilitate that multi-cloud ability? How do we create those A2A type protocols? And it is about meeting customers where they are, right?
Yeah.
That's the reality. There is a complex existing landscape, and this is about how do you leverage and get shorter time to value from over the top of those existing legacy. So yeah, I think it's a principle that we've continued to see is in our ethos, but it's also like it's the right thing to do. Customers really, really like open ecosystems and flexibility and interoperability.
And you said the A2A, that gets Dave very excited.
Does it?
He's got this vision of the future where there's just agents everywhere, all communicating openly, and that just redefines your enterprise. And of course, A2A is the thing that a big enabler. We've discussed it a few times on the pod, but it's
two major enablers to the. You've got this thing like live organizations, where you can use some form of front end, kind of Gemini enabled interface.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even emotive interface now from this week's announcement that's actually representing the tone and the values and the data of your organization. So you can effectively talk to your organization. But then also with things like agent to agent now, where you could have agents that are actually, automating your supply chain across multiple different organizations. So agent to agent is like intra agent, but also inter organization, which is like super fascinating. And then when you connect that to, say, intelligent cloud and IoT, you could literally chat to your organization and just kind of instruct it to do things.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's the future, isn't it?
It is incredible. So specifically on that, one of the things I've been working on over the past year has been with an industry forum called TM Forum.
Right.
Yeah.
And we built a Gemini enterprise search capability that's able to search all the standards and the corpus of industry knowledge. But what Vodafone are doing is then leveraging that, invoking that API into their enterprise architecture workflow.
Right.
And it's, to your point, this is something that's a corpus of knowledge that sits in an industry alliance, and being able to then, in a CSP, be able to leverage that knowledge and bake it into how they're then doing their enterprise architecture. So to your point, that's really exciting because you're being able to create those connections and mesh it with your first party with external sources. So
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, exactly that. And that was the data grounding.
Enhanced grounding.
I thought it was another a breakthrough announcement this week, which will really set off the monetization of data for the first of all, but then second of all, organizations that will just allowing APIs to their data, probably have some kind of way to report the fact that it's trusted data.
Yep.
And then locking that into your AI infrastructure.
You think about this though, when GenAI first came out, there was all that talk about hallucination. And there was always going to be a thing, well, we'll get it under control, we'll sort it out. It didn't take very long before all the controls went in and the reliability went through the roof. And it just showed, and that's less than a year.
Yeah.
So we're talking about hallucinating AI in 2024. 2025 we don't talk about it anymore because it doesn't really happen because all the controls are, as long as it's appropriately configured, it's good, isn't it? Yeah.
But that's the sheer
if you don't
pace.
configure it right, fair enough, you're out the window. But yeah, it's under control now, isn't it? Which is a big thing.
That's the sheer pace, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
That's the thing that I think it's the pace of this stuff, the proliferation of everything. It's mind-boggling, but the speed is just incessant.
Yeah.
So it's exciting, but also, people are looking for that help to get through the sort of how do we do this alongside everything else we've got.
Well, we'll maybe come back to that adoption lag challenge, because I think it is real. But before that, let's talk specifically about the world of telecom, Jen, and maybe just set the scene a little bit for us. What exactly is your role and how does it operate? What's a day in the life type of description?
Yeah, absolutely. So So Telecom is, I'm part of the Telecom Industry team. So we sit at the intersection of our product and engineering organization, where I've spent some of my career in Google, and we sit at the intersection of that and our field organization. So the folks that are working with customers every day, single day. And we're looking for where are those big CXO challenges, where are those big rocks, and how do we bring together our technology into meaningful reference architectures, use cases, into packaged kind of bundles. And we're working hand in glove with partners as well to do that, right? Some of it's first party, some of it's working with partners, absolutely. And that's really where we achieve scale. So we're really sitting in that intersection. And as I was touching on just when we were getting going, like telecom is a really interesting and important strategic vertical for Google overall.
Right.
Alphabet and the relationship that we have with not just cloud, but across our Pixel and our Android and our Chrome and all these other elements. It means that when we're working with our CSP customers globally, they're really interested to kind of embrace, and I would say sustainability and energy is another topic where we often are collaborating. Is something I'm personally doing a lot on as well, in partnership with Capgemini. There's a whole raft of these strategic topics. So we're often sitting at that, giving that holistic view in terms of how we can partner as Google.
And in that, presumably you can see a sort of a good deal of the C-level conversation that's going on across the industry. What's your characterization of where the boards are, particularly as related to some of the speed of innovation that Andy was talking about around things like AI and what that might mean? Have they got their heads around it, or are they still struggling to understand the art of the possible?
What's been fascinating for me has been how tech forward CEOs and CFOs and others, like it's in the last 3 years, I would say, the kind of appetite to really get into the weeds on some of the technology is like leaps and bounds from where it may have been historically because of ChatGPT and because of the kind of consumerization of generative AI.
Right.
And then now kind of everyone is recognizing the kind of transformative nature of this technology, and the boards, they want to be able to talk to their teams in a meaningful way, and the CXO in a meaningful way about what could this actually really mean.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me, like to see that appetite for a technology-driven conversation, but always linked to, and therefore, what does it mean for my top-line revenue growth, or my operational efficiency, or my improvement in customer experience, and so forth, or improvement in my sustainability goals. So, but it is incredible that that's a bit of a step change, actually.
And it's an exciting time for telco because they're starting to branch out into diversified go-to-market with the whole sovereign thing. They're getting out of the box where they lost metered networking, and it was like best effort type things back to higher order services. And I think they see that return to growth pattern. They've been a bit beleaguered, low growth, not knowing where to go, and you see it starting to rise. And it was at MWC this year, you could see a much more excited atmosphere about we can get back to where we used to be.
What's MWC, Rob?
Mobile World Congress, David.
Mobile World Congress, yeah. Which is
you can actually check back, and we've done a few podcasts from there.
We have, if you want to go back and listen to the thread from that. Nice. But I agree, that at that conference, it seemed to me that there was a new mojo emerging.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
And that wasn't previous. It wasn't there even the previous year, I didn't think.
Yeah, and it is fascinating because you're right. Telcos have been working very hard to figure out how to crack the code on growth. And I actually think it's super interesting time in terms of they're a super trusted brand. And when you're in a place where technology is moving at pace, you have to place some, no regrets moves.
Yep.
And you're thinking as a business, like, who do I work with on these types of topics? Security is a big topic as well. Again, goes back to trusted partners. So we're seeing a lot of interest in that B2B conversation with the telcos. Sovereignty was another topic, right? Telcos are really obviously national.
Yeah,
perfectly sovereign organizations.
Yeah,
they are perfectly sovereign.
National facilities.
Seeing kind of how they're embracing that, working with partners such as ourselves is really exciting. So yeah, definitely feels like there's an opportunity to really reinvent themselves a little bit and to come back to growth and to come back to playing that they do fundamentally enable the digital economy.
Yeah. Without them, it doesn't work, does it? Nope.
So, exciting.
You must be seeing a lot of interest from them in the distributed cloud offer that you guys have had for a year or so. But at this conference, you've announced Gemini being native on that. So, I mean, that must be arousing a lot of interest, is it?
Yeah, GDC, Google Distributed Cloud, and the ability to have that flexible deployment model between GDC and GCP is really important to the telcos. They are under strict regulation, and network workloads, there's still at the infancy of putting network workloads onto cloud. So having flexibility into the deployment model with things like Google Distributed Cloud is really powerful. We're doing a whole raft of different use cases. And we're just at the foothills of it, really. But a lot of appetite to understand how they can use it inside their own data centers, but with all the flexibility and the great services that you can access in the public cloud. So,
well, while we were at MWC, we were lucky enough to talk to IDC. Lots of three-letter acronyms emerging in this.
Just keep going. Just make them up.
Just trying to push through. So we talked to one of their analysts, and they set out quite an interesting framework in terms of how AI is being adopted by the telcos. Rob, do you want to remind us of that?
Yeah, so it was responding to AI. So AI being done to the telcos, what do we do about it? AI for the telcos, which is how do I stick it into the mobile core and into my enterprise? And then it's offering AI by the telcos, which is like the sovereign AI services, GDC, things like that. And when you frame it up, it creates three interesting conversations associated with the how do we respond, what do we do to ourselves, and how do we offer new services to the market? And then it was clear that all three are being discussed strategically by most of the telcos and thinking, what do we do here?
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, I have to say, one of the things I really enjoyed about Mobile World Congress was also seeing how frequently you could see the Gemini logo on handset manufacturers, on the OEM.
Yeah.
So to your point about the inbound, kind of like the ability to integrate generative AI into the handset and to offer differentiated consumer experiences, and that be part of how the telcos, create those digital lifestyles, become a digital lifestyle provider, right? And then absolutely in terms of how do they, reduce cost, improve customer experience, have right first time repairs. But, we've all been there when you've had dropped calls or poor service and all of that. And how can they just create great connectivity with lower cost and keep their customers happy, right? It's really key. And then to your point about top line growth and B2B, we are in a market predominantly that is saturated for B2C. And so actually B2B is going to be a major opportunity. And how do they frame that up in the right way and use generative AI to completely, they've done a great job in terms of applying AI to the B2C kind of call center experience with some of the first virtual call centers now we're seeing. You think of all that decades, a lot of experience there. How do you then take that to make your B2B operations just as slick and just as meaningful and just, reduce that cost to serve and so forth. So yeah, that's a really interesting sort of cross-reference we're seeing from B2C to B2B. But yeah, there's lots of kind of innovation, lots of just also cross-industry fertilization. I'm seeing lessons from the airline pricing industry, being brought into telco. I'm seeing, just kind of dynamic pricing and things like this, which just embracing kind of not just kind of doing what we've always done, but actually looking and seeing where are the opportunities to do different.
And it was we talked about that, the influencer tariff, which is you can pay for a better quality of service on the network, so you can get guaranteed. So broadcast organizations would want that and sort of thing. So going back to everybody doesn't get the same, you can pay for an elevated level of service. So I absolutely agree with the B2B growth, but they are starting to explore new commercial models as well in the B2C about will people pay for a premium telco service. So we sort of discussed it, you buy your concert ticket and you get an eSIM that has a better service for the time you're there, so you can get your selfie out. You get your video and selfie out first. Very important for you, Dave.
I was going to say top of mind for you, Rob. Touche. The IDC framework, for, to, and by AI to the telcos. You must be seeing some crunchy adoption stories now that you've been working on. What are the ones that stand out for you?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, we as the telco industry, we get really into the nitty gritty of like, where can you really make the difference to, for example, a network engineer's kind of day-to-day job. And we've had some really exciting work we've been doing with Bell Canada, which, if you are a network engineer, like some of the statistics you have about the number of alarms that come in, it's like 500,000 alarms per month come into like a network operations center. And like anyone who's trying to kind of understand, how do I triage that? How do I prioritize that? It's incredibly difficult. So one of the initial use cases has been around working with Bell to reduce that to like 150,000, for example. So, a decent, that's a major...
That's a big chunk of operational improvement, isn't it?
Yeah. And being able to understand why, it's called alarm suppression, like how can you do that in a safe way? So that the ones that you're not seeing them for a reason, right? There's a pattern, it's recognized, it's being able to say, no, actually that's happened because of that reason, and it's look back at previous logs and so forth. So that has been really interesting. And more to the point, it's also, when you make those improvements, we've seen 25% reduction in inbound calls from customers about network issues, because you're focusing where the impact is felt, and you're using that precious engineering time and resource to focus where it matters, and therefore there's less customers calling in and saying like, I had a terrible service today, or like, to your point, I went to this concert and I couldn't get my selfie out, So that is exciting when you can see an impact both on the engineers' like day-to-day work, and then also in terms of like the customers and how they feel it, and how they then get more attached to the brand, right? And so that's one example. And then other pieces over in Europe, there's been some great work we've been doing with Deutsche Telekom, some great work we've been doing with Vodafone. In fact, I was sharing with some colleagues earlier today about the work we're doing around field force assistance. So this is like, think about, you've got someone that's 2 weeks into a job as a field engineer, and you've got someone that's done the job for 20 years. And how do you, using all the amazing multimodal capabilities that we've got at our disposal today, how do you create that experience so that person that stood in front of a complex cabinet with a load of routers and wires and SFP modules, how can they use their phone, take a picture, and it says, that's a Cisco, that's a Cisco router, that's a faulty SFP module, it's not compatible, checking your inventory, you've got a compatible one. Next best action would be, it means...
Are you doing that as augmented reality?
Well, this is a series of, for example, taking a photograph, but you're right, you can do video, you can think about how it would integrate with, a ruggedized kind of Google Glass type. So we're just in the foothills that we have an, audio, because the other thing is you might not want to be looking at a screen.
That idea is copyright Cloud Realities Productions.
Is it? Okay, good to know.
just make that clear.
So it's that ability to sort of see the technology fresh and then see it quickly being put into like real tangible use cases. That's exciting.
And if you can optimize field force like that, it's massive, because if you think about a human in a van might be driving for 2 hours, they might think they have to come back, but actually the technology allows them to solve the problem in a different way.
Right.
And then it's obviously the telcos connecting the telemetry, and so you know where to go and how you diagnose it. There's a huge amounts of efficiency in an organization, because it takes them hours sometimes to get to where they need to go. Some of these base stations are far away.
Long way out.
Truck roll, Verizon estimated truck roll is, $150, $200. So like, if you think about that, I'm sure it's equivalent in other CSPs globally. Saving time, saving money, saving emissions, etc. So making customers better, happier. So
one of the other things I wanted to just talk to you about, just before we came on air, you were telling us a little bit about it, is a focus on small to medium business. Now, just for the benefit of listeners, small to medium business doesn't really do justice to the scale of the businesses that exist in that section of the market. I think Gartner at least defined that as somewhere between 1 billion and 4 billion. So these things are not tiny little mom and pop shops. They're quite significant organizations in their own right. And what's noticeable, I think, is that there's a lot of focus going into that section of the market at the moment. Avanade have announced in that area, Wipro have announced in that area. Each of the different cloud service providers are also focused on that area. What is it that's driving that interest at the moment from your seat, Jen? And do you recognize that as a market trend?
Yeah, I definitely recognise it as an untapped market opportunities for the CSP specifically. I think our and you're right, like they're the lifeblood of many economies.
Yeah.
And you look at how the volume of people that are employed
That's right.
in
That's
SMBs
right.
and so forth. So how you help them to kind of get access to all of this incredible technology, and who are the partners they can work with, to your point about the kind of how do you work with the ecosystem. So yeah, and we're seeing particularly Google Workspace, like collaboration products, are very popular in that segment.
Right.
And so there's kind of a natural kind of sort of attraction to that. So yeah, and we're seeing that. So our telco partners are saying, how can you help us anticipate the needs of a growth business? So and if you think about it, it touches different parts of Google. I touched a little bit on cross product area, one Google as we call it. Because they'll probably be looking at ads and search engine optimization, and they'll be thinking about their digital presence, and they'll be thinking, how do I have a finance software? How do I have HR software? So all of this, how you grow a business and how do you meet the needs of a CEO who just wants to crack on with growing their business. They don't want to think too much about endpoint protection of their, bring your own devices and all that. How do you take care of all those digital needs?
Right.
And they look around, who to go to help with that. And CSPs are often someone that's providing, for example, handsets or, devices. And they're thinking, how can I be more holistic in terms of servicing their needs? And working with, as I say, like some of the stuff we've done with telcos globally has been really focused on that segment. Like Indosat's a great example where we've spent a lot of time on that.
And are the conversations different to the type of conversation you might have with an enterprise customer, for example? Are the needs of what they're trying to do, do they show up differently?
Yeah, in terms of the kind of one click to deploy, and there's a more of an appetite for kind of simple,
super simple, like package solutions.
Yeah, because they don't have massive in-house digital teams, right? So they're looking for consumable IT that's secure, that does what it needs to do, etc. So. But yeah, so I'd say the key difference is the simplicity, the frictionless. But it's so I think that's somewhere where we're definitely seeing a lot of interest. And I mentioned security a lot. As you can think about, you're using for example different devices across the business. You're thinking about customer data being distributed across devices, etc. And how do you work with secure providers that are able to give you peace of mind, so rather than so taking care of that side of things is a key thing. So yeah, we're very, as I say, we've got some great examples, and we're seeing that as something there. We get a lot of inbound kind of requests, sit and work with us to think about this segment and how we could address it together. So yeah.
I sat through some of the sessions today, the learning sessions for the partners, and it was exactly that. The word that came out a lot was trust. They've got exactly the same problems as big enterprises, but don't have the skills or the capacity to deal with it. But there was a lot of trust, and then there was a whole, the stack from Google is open, and their help there is very available. And there was a lot of trust in the room, and a lot of asking for help. So whether it was from specific providers or ISVs, or indeed just a general openness to hear it, it was really interesting to hear exactly the same issues. A lot of cyber and security type stuff, which they just don't, they're not equipped for.
It's something you've been looking at in the UK as well, right? On a day job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Point of view.
So I think, as you say, we've seen the market move that way. When we look at our relationship with partners and all the sort of tech companies, they're all set up for the whole pyramid, if you like, the economy. And, as growth has sort of slowed a little bit in other areas, perhaps, then it's a natural thing to sort of open up a bit more that way as well. So, but yeah, I thought this morning's sessions, I sat through a lot of those SMB meetings they had, and it was really interesting to listen to the same things.
And I liked your point about just how important this section is to the economy generally, but specifically how nations operate. And it seems to me that there's a good that can be done here too, which is to help those organizations get their heads around AI, and particularly sovereign AI and the development of AI in nation states feels like an important thing to get right. You know what I mean? Like whether it's the ethical dilemmas of it or whether it's some of the complexities in the world today, like thinking about AI in that sort of way, it's like an incredible power that needs to be harnessed correctly.
Yeah, for sure. I think AI infrastructure and how do you meet all of your regulatory requirements? How do you invest smartly? Because, this technology is moving at pace, right? The chips are refreshing regularly. So how do you, there is a different world that we live in when the risk kind of profile of the world is different. So, and people are looking to their telcos as, national providers, as trusted brands, as long-standing kind of, members of their economies and responsible to government and so forth. And I think super interesting kind of how do they embrace sovereign AI as a opportunity to service, sovereign workloads that need to have those specific needs met. So
very good. Well, look, let's close the conversation down there. Jen, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, before we let you go, though, we have been amazed by some of the magic that's been in the air here with when you're looking at some of the certain releases. Like some of the releases are actually legitimately mind-blowing, and if you showed them to like a version of us 5 years ago, your mind would boggle at them, almost like an illusion.
Yep.
And it brought to mind Arthur C. Clarke's third law, which is, I'm going to actually quote it this time, I'm going to get it exactly right. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I think when you apply that here at the moment, particularly this next, I think you were right earlier when you were saying that, there's been a rate of announcement over the last 3 nexts. But I think this one is where a lot of themes have come together, and it's like it is quite amazing some of what it can do.
Yeah.
And to that end, then we've been asking our guests, who was your favorite magician when you were growing up?
It's got to be David Copperfield.
Copperfield. Just down the road. We saw him the other day, coincidentally. What do you like about Copperfield?
It's just the sheer ambition of what he sets out to do is amazing.
That is true. And Andy, you're going on Friday, right?
I am. We are going on Friday after a strong recommendation, it must be said.
Was it from David?
Some commission
can't believe.
following as well, I believe. But
I mean, I'd like to be on commission from David Copperfield, but unfortunately for the record, I'm not getting a cent out of it.
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
See what we can do, Dave.
Maybe he listens, Dave. Do you reckon he does?
He might
interested in...
he might have his own AI stack.
Yeah. Probably was.
Yeah.
True magic. There we go.
Exactly.
True magic.
Stuff just falls
magic
together.
And magic together.
This
fused.
stuff just falls together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think Copperfield's wonderful. Now, the other thing I was going to ask you particularly, because you don't sound like you're from these parts.
No.
You're from the UK.
I am.
Do you remember Paul Daniels?
Of course, yeah.
Thank God someone has. Like, all of our other guests this week who are not from the UK have been completely blank-faced when I mentioned Daniels.
Yeah.
But isn't it amazing? Like, he used to have prime time Saturday night BBC One TV, and he was a superstar in the UK.
Yeah.
You don't get magic on TV like that anymore.
Oh yeah, Generation. Oh yeah, bring out all the old classics.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you just don't get that kind of stuff anymore.
No, there's no magic.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the magic is via AI these days.
It is. That's what we'll have to put up with, which is a good magic, let's be fair. So if you would like to discuss any of the issues on today's show and how they may impact your business, please get in touch at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're all on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to connect and DM if you have any questions for the show to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us improve the show. A huge thanks to Jen and our stand-in host, Andy. Our sound and editing wizard, Ben and Louis. Our producer, who's now absent and somewhere else. And of course, to
wine and cocktails in the lounge.
Wine and cocktails in the lounge. Yeah. And to all our listeners, see you in Google's reality next.